podcast contains discussions of real criminal cases, including descriptions of violence, abuse, and other disturbing events. Some listeners may find this content too graphic or emotionally triggering. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This episode is not suitable for children or sensitive audiences. The purpose of this podcast is to inform, document, and raise awareness about real life crimes while honoring victims and survivors. All information presented is based on publicly available sources and investigative reporting. If you feel distressed at any point while listening, please consider pausing the episode and seeking professional support. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Krime KE podcast. My good name is Ajuma and I am a human rights journalist from Kenya. This week we get into the 2016 murder of Solomon Mwangi, who was the principal of Kiru Boys High School in Murang'a County. This is a story about a revenge plan that was executed with precision and a lot of cruelty. To begin this story, let me take you to the morning of November 7th of 2016. Now, the KCSE exams had just begun nationwide, and during that time, principals of schools were required to pick up exam papers for the day's exams every day at the place designated by the Ministry of Education. Now, Solomon Mwangi, the principal of Kiru Boys High School, did not show up to collect his students' exam papers, which was very unusual. After he went missing for several hours, he was reported missing by his wife, Jen Mudhoni, and a frantic search to find him began. Mudhoni was at the time also a principal of Ishashiri Girls Secondary School in Kiambu County. I hope I am pronouncing the name of the school correctly. So the search for Mwangi continued up until 8 days later on November 14th, when his mutilated body was found at Karakuta Coffee Estate in Juja, Kiambu County. According to a report by Citizen TV, he was found with his hands tied, his face was badly bruised, and some of his teeth were missing. His body was covered in soiled gunny bags. Homicide detectives, cybercrime investigators, and crime scene detectives all came together to search for answers and find justice in Mwangi's murder. They conducted witness interviews, forensic analysis, and crime scene experts combed the crime scene thoroughly. Now, after a detailed investigation, the detectives were able to place at least 3 suspects at the crime scene. Crime scene evidence and phone records placed Jan Mudhoni, Mwangi's wife, a man identified as Isaac Ng'ang'a Wambui, and another man named Joseph Njoguna Karaoke at the crime scene. Now, in a jailhouse interview with the Standard newspaper, Mudhoni said that she found out about her husband's death from a Murang'a DCI officer. She said that this officer showed up at her home where she was with her 3 kids and they were all worried about Mwangi. The officer told her that he had been found dead and she was needed at the station to help with the investigation. But when she followed the officer to the station, she was actually placed under arrest and labeled the main suspect in the murder of the man she calls the love of her life. The 2 other suspects, Karaoke and Ng'ang'a, were arrested quickly after Mudhoni, and the 3 of them were arraigned at the Nakuru High Court on December 28th of 2016. The investigation also revealed that Mwangi had been drugged before he was murdered. The government chemist found xylazine in his kidneys, liver, and stomach. Now, xylazine is also known as trunk or sleep cut. It is a veterinary tranquilizer approved for use in large animals as a sedative and a muscle relaxant, but it is not approved for human use. Xylazine is a non-opioid sedative that can slow the brain, the breathing, the heart rate, and lower the blood pressure. Now, after the arrest, Mudhoni gave the police a list of people who may have been involved in Mwangi's murder. At first, She said that she suspected a car dealer who was supposed to import a car for them was the one who murdered her husband. She said that Mwangi had received death threats from the dealer, and he had even reported the incident to the police on November 1st, just a few days before he went missing. Now, according to Muthoni's statement, the car dealer had gotten 1.5 million shillings from them, and he had failed to actually import the car that he was supposed to import for the money. She also told the police that other principals were unhappy with his transfer to Kiru Boys High School, and that may have also led them to plan his murder. Muthoni said that there was a cartel in the education system that had apparently demanded up to 1 million shillings from them to facilitate their transfers to their school of choice. So that was among the list of people that she thought were responsible for her husband's murder. So the three suspects were arraigned and they all pleaded not guilty to the charges. And according to the charge sheet, Muthoni was being accused of orchestrating and financing Mwangi's murder between November 6th and November 11th of 2016. Now, according to the prosecution's theory, Muthoni hired 3 men to murder Mwangi because she suspected that he was having an affair with a 28-year-old woman who worked at an M-Pesa shop in Kiriani town in Murang'a. She had confronted Mwangi with her suspicions and he had denied them several times, but she was convinced that something was going on between the two. Now, this theory was actually backed by Muthoni's co-accused, Karaoke, who confessed to the whole murder plot and even revealed that the plan had been ongoing for at least 6 months. According to Karaoke's confession, he was first introduced to Muthoni in 2016 by his longtime friend, a woman named Damaris. He got a call from Damaris in June 2016, and she informed him that she had a well-paying job for him. After he agreed to do the job, they planned a meeting the next day at Trees Shed Resort in Kimbo, Murang'a County. He said that that was the first time he met Muthoni, and they would always refer to her as Mwalimu. In that meeting, Muthoni told him that she would pay him and 2 other guys 400,000 Kenyan shillings to murder an M-Pesa shop attendant for having an affair with her husband. He said that Muthoni showed him love text messages on her phone that she said were between her husband and the M-Pesa shop attendant. Karaoke said that he agreed to the offer, and the next day they got down to the execution of the plan. The next day at around midday, Karaoke said that he was picked up by a man identified as Nelson Jiru, and the 3 men, Karaoke, Jiru, and Nganga, who was arrested with them, went to the M-Pesa shop in Kiriaine, I'm assuming to murder the girl, but that didn't happen. Now, that didn't happen because when they got to the M-Pesa shop, they saw that it was located in a very not good part of town for them. It was located in a part of town close to Kiriaine police station, and it was also close to an Equity bank close by. Now, both of these had very heavy police presence, and the bank even had a CCTV camera outside. So they knew that they would not be able to murder her and get away with it. They knew that they would have a hard time getting away with murdering her with that much security, especially in broad daylight. So instead, they went to the shop, bought sodas from the girl, and they left. Now, 2 days later, they all met with Muthoni back at the Tree Shed Resort, and they explained to her that they couldn't go through with the initial plan to murder the M-Pesa attendant. That was when Muthoni gave them 100,000 Kenyan shillings down payment from the 400,000 shillings she had promised, and told them that she had another plan in mind. They would murder her husband instead. Now, the plan was that Muthoni would drag Mwangi and then hand him over to the 3 when he was disoriented so that they would finish the job. So on November 4th of 2016, the 4 of them, Karaoke, Muthoni, Nganga, and Njiru met at the Texas bar in Kiriaine, and they decided that they would execute this plan the next day, which is the November 5th of 2016. Mudhoni would spike his drink at his house at the teacher's quarters in Kiru Boys High School, and then once the drug took effect, the three would move in and strangle him to death. That was the plan. So they met the next day, and Mudhoni drove them into Kiru Boys High School in a tinted vehicle, so no one really saw them entering the school. She took them to the teacher's quarters, and they watched as she spoke to Mwangi before the two of them went into his residence. The three of them, of course, remained back in the car, waiting for Mudhoni's signal that Mwangi was disoriented so that they could move in. However, she came back later and told them that the drugging had failed because she put the drug in his water and the water turned dirty, so she couldn't give him the water to drink. Then, when she tried to put it in his tea, it didn't work. She then made up an excuse that she was going to buy food and used that time to drive them out of the school. The plan failed again. Now, but the thing is, Mudhoni never gave up on her plan to murder her husband. Karaoke say that she told them to meet her the next day, that is November 6th, at a place called Urithi near Ndarugo in Kiambu. She said that she would do the same thing they had agreed on, drag him and then hand him over to them. The couple spent the night at their Kiambu house, so that meeting point was closer to them. That evening, she apparently hired a vehicle and told Mwangi to accompany her to see a plot of land that she was planning to buy from a housing cooperative in Kiambu. She would actually succeed in dragging him this time around, and once he was weak and disoriented, she drove him to his killers. Now, according to Karaoke, Mwangi was weak and kept dozing off when Mudhoni brought him to them that day. Mudhoni was driving the car, and Mwangi was in the front passenger seat. Karaoke and Nganga got in the back of the vehicle, and Mudhoni drove them to an unnamed forest. She stopped at a specific place within the forest, and she just said Nihapa, which was like a signal that they had arrived at the place where they were supposed to finish the job. Karaoke said that once Mudhoni gave them the signal, Nganga took a rope from under the seat and put it around Mwangi's neck from the back. The two of them then dragged him from the car deep into the forest, and I want to give another disclaimer here. The next sentence is pretty graphic. Karaoke said that once they got deeper into the forest, they tied up Mwangi's hands and tightened the rope around his neck and hanged him from a tree using all four limbs. Once he was dead, Nganga wrapped his body in gunny bags and he took his shoes with him. For what reason, I don't know. Karaoke said that by the time they were done, they returned to where they had left Mudhoni in the car to find that she had already left them there in the middle of the forest. Karaoke said that they have never tracked Mudhoni after that, even to complete the remaining 300,000 shilling payment that she was supposed to after the job was done. He said that her phone was off after that, so they were never able to reach her after that incident. I also want to mention that the third suspect in this case, Nelson Njiru, disappeared after the crime. As far as I know, he has never been found or even arrested. Now, in exchange for his confession and testimony, Karaoke took a plea deal and he agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter and testify against Mudhoni and Nganga for the state or the prosecution. He was sentenced to 7 years in jail for his part in Mwangi's murder. Now, the trial against Mudhoni and Nganga lasted 5 years, with the prosecution bringing several witnesses to testify against them. In her testimony, Mudhoni said that Maina and her had a very perfect marriage and he never had an affair or brought another woman into their marriage. She told the court that their relationship was stable and they were even trying to get transferred from their respective schools together at the time he was murdered. Mwangi also testified, and he denied hatching the plot to murder the principal, of course, as expected. When he was asked about Njiru, who essentially disappeared during the investigation, he said that he had only known him as a Miraa seller and a friend, but he didn't know where he was or he didn't know anything about him apart from that. The 28-year-old M-Pesa shop attendant also testified, and she told the court that Mudhoni had threatened her so many times, claiming that she was involved with her husband. She denied ever having an affair with Mwangi and showed the court the threatening text messages that Mudhoni had sent her. Another important testimony came from Damaris, who refuted Mudhoni's testimony. She told the court that Mudhoni had always suspected an affair between Mwangi and the M-Pesa shop attendant. She said that Mudhoni recruited her to retrieve text messages between Mwangi and the woman for 200,000 Kenyan shillings. I don't know what obsession this woman had with these messages. After a 5-year-long period of testimonies, the Nakuru High Court found Mudhoni and Ng'ang'a guilty of Mwangi's murder on April 22nd of 2021. The judge said that the prosecution had proven their case, and he even described Mudhoni as a vengeful wife who masterminded and procured her husband's murder, and in the end, she handed him to his killers. The prosecution tried to ask for the death penalty in the case by saying that neither of the accused showed any remorse or regret for their actions throughout the whole trial. But on the morning of Thursday, June 3rd of 2021, the judge sentenced Mudhoni and Ng'ang'a to 30 years in prison for the brutal murder of Principal Solomon Mwangi. The judge said that the 30-year sentence was deserved because of the level of premeditation involved in the principal's murder. They had failed several times to actually complete the plan, but instead of using that as a chance to take a step back, they chose this path and they followed through with it. But again, the judge also said that since they were first-time offenders, their sentences will be backdated to 2016 when they were first arraigned. So I guess they are removing 5 years, so they would serve, I think, 25 years in prison in general. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this episode. You can support Krime KE podcast by sharing this episode with your friends so that we can get a larger community to listen to these cases. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at krime.ke, and you can find me on Facebook at Ajuma Millicent for updates on the cases covered on the podcast. I have tagged the podcast contact information and social media pages in the show notes for this episode so that it is easier for you to reach out if you have any feedback on this episode or the podcast in general. We also have a WhatsApp number, which I have put in the show notes of this episode. You can send in voice notes, suggest cases, and give feedback. Don't forget to give the podcast a 5-star rating on Spotify and catch the next episode of Krime KE podcast on Thursday next week on the same platform you're listening on right now. But until then, stay safe and remember, it is crime with a K.